Hi, I'm Linda Baker, and I would like to welcome you to the Rocky Mountain National Water Media exhibit. I had the great honor this year of being your juror, and I would like to take this opportunity to showcase the award winners. First off, just let me say that this was a very high quality show. The entries were strong and the choices were hard, were difficult. As a juror, we are always trying to pick a balanced show and want to showcase a little bit of everything and hopefully find some things that strike us as new and different and showing a personal vision of the artist. Composition is always included in the challenge, but along with composition, personal vision, concept, a unique use of materials, all of these things are always welcome. So having said this, I would like to introduce you to the award winners for the 2020 Rocky Mountain. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this by sharing my screen. And can I just tell you, this is not my specialty, so that I hope you will bear with me. I'm going to start with the least award first and then move toward the biggest award, just so that you know as you're viewing these slides. So here we go. This is the 47th annual Rocky Mountain National Water Media. It goes from September 11th to October 24th, 2020, and it is hosted by the Center for the Arts Evergreen in Colorado. And as I mentioned, I am Linda Daly Baker. So let's get started. Xiao Fang, the painting is called Morning Mist. I was really enamored by this. I love the looseness of the watercolor. This is watercolor at its best. I have a little pointer here that I will try to show you. Right over here, the artist has added just some subtle tree shapes. And then here back in the distance, just some very faint tree shapes, which this makes us go deep into the painting. It gives the painting depth and more perspective. So even though this is almost an abstract approach to a nature scene, we do get the feeling of trees, and we get the feeling of trees in the distance, and it really allows us to enjoy the looseness that watercolor is best known for. This is Lynn Hardwick, Nomad's Vision. I think it's 38, so apparently she's done a few of these. I'm very drawn to the different shades of gray. The geometric shapes that are not quite geometric make it more interesting, sort of the obscure shapes. Obviously, this artist has worked with a series of layering, because we can see the colors coming through from underneath. I particularly like the difference of the pure whites and the warm whites, because it really encourages your eye to undulate across this painting. She has a little bit of a diagonal thrust here, which inside of a rectangular painting with sort of some obscure rectangles makes it a little bit more interesting. Some of the more interesting parts are these little bits that go off the edge, or these little things over here that sort of swing around and intrigue us and offer more interest. So I think this is a well done, I would call this a non-objective, because I don't see any reference to anything, but the artist might tell you something different. So, and you may see something different yourself. Kathleen Conover has done a painting entitled Searching. This is more of a concept painting, and it's sort of a little bit away from what we totally expect from watercolor. She's used a very neutral palette so that the palette doesn't doesn't obstruct your vision or her concept. The figure is obviously very contemplative. It has a lot to do with animals, nature, the evolution of time. That's what I feel out of it. And then, of course, we have the all-important origami bird over here that makes it totally thought-provoking. One of the things that makes this piece even more successful than just her concept are these random lines that she has going through the painting. The random lines really work to give us a sense of swirling motion, maybe confusion, maybe chaos, maybe all the things that the world offers. And then particular this curvilinear shape that she's developed around the figures. So the figures are rather static. They're sort of vertical and horizontal. And then we have this swirling of movement. And that movement really adds to the intrigue and the thought process that goes into this painting. Thomas Riebeck, White Chrysanthemum. This is a little bit more of a realistic painting. I would not call this truly photorealism because we still have some wonderful softness around the edges. If you'll notice, the hard edges are by the marbles and by the chrysanthemum, which offers a really lovely shape. But down here, these shapes are not hard edged. They're sort of soft and they sort of blend and they sort of give us the feeling of integration and unity, which makes this more successful perhaps than a photorealism would be. I think the use of this light gray stripe down here is very creative because had the artist made the stripe black like the background up here, we would not have gotten into the painting as easily because the artist chose this light going into this white. And this is a very important shape right here where these marbles just sort of teeter off the edge and this shadow drips over the edge. Really invites us right here from a diagonal point of view, invites us into the painting. I would like to talk a little bit about the chrysanthemum because one of the reasons we are drawn to trees and flowers and the human figure, things that have these kinds of organic shapes. And this is a quote from Edgar Whitney where he said, "A perfect shape is either longer, wider, or higher." So this is longer this way, has an oblique, and oblique means a little bit of a diagonal thrust, which this has, and incidence at the edges. Now, incidence at the edges means all of these little curvilinear, interesting shapes here that make us stop and look at this shape. So according to Edgar Whitney, this is a perfect shape. And therefore, putting it all together, it makes one of today's award winners. I was really drawn to this. I really enjoyed the very loose, almost a poured effect of the colors. Look at the oranges going into the yellows, going into the blues and greens. And interesting here that this artist has chosen not to have a background. And I think that's very successful in this case because the background, any background, even a soft pale background, would have competed with the shapes that are inside the painting. And the fact that the background is white and then the top shapes are white gives us a sense of depth. This whole thing has a lot of harmony and unity. And I want you to take a look at the edges. Look at, here is a big shape going off the edge. Here is a medium shape going off the edge, a little small one, a little bigger one, a tiny one. So this artist has given us a lot of interest going off the edges. And when you take a painting off the edges of the painting like this one has, they always recommend that you do it at least 3 places. And if we were to just glance at it, we would say 1, 2, 3, and that's very successful. The other ones are smaller. But it also gives us a sense that there's a lot more going on outside the plane of the painting. It gives us a feeling that it's not contained, that it's not confined, that we're just looking at a little, a smidgen of something that goes on and on forever, which I think is very effective. I really like the handling of the white shapes, the way they've got all of the soft colors of the underpainting drawn through it, I think is very interesting. And one thing I found quite intriguing about this painting is the use of these small circles. Some of them are light, some of them are dark, but they act as transportation, sort of inviting our eye to wander throughout the painting. It's even right here in the stem. And I think the artist putting that extra added detail in there really encourages our eye to wander around the painting. Steve Griggs, Find Your Light. I was very interested in this painting because if you cover the figures down here with your hand, then you have almost an abstract painting, and you wouldn't realize that it's giving a nod to buildings and architecture. And also the color scheme is quite unusual in this painting. We don't think of an urban city scene done in soft salmon or pale lavenders. It just, that color scheme doesn't come to mind. So having said that, it seems so effective. And I want you to take a look at these figures. For one thing, they are on the very bottom of the painting, which, as you know, we always suggest that the focal point be in one of the center of one of the 4 quadrants. And here it is right down here across the bottom. And in sometimes when something's right across the bottom, it blocks your view into the painting. But the way these legs are just barely suggested actually invites us in. And even though there is not a single figure here that is the figure of a shape, we have no doubt that this is a small crowd of people. So I think the artist has been very effective in stylizing the figures. And this little addition of some bumps of color here on such a soft palette really adds to the interest and really adds to the focal point. So I thought this was very interesting, very spontaneous looking, and very well done. Robbie Laird, Time and Time Again, Evening Glow. Now this is just a beautiful painting of nature. And we know that nature is not necessarily purple and blue and green and orange and all of these colors. And yet there's no doubting that this is nature, that is nature-based, and that this person loves nature. So I really like the sort of out-of-the-box color selection that this artist has made. I'm particularly drawn to the diagonal thrust that we have through here, and the tree being at a slight diagonal also offers more interest than say, does this one that's straight up. So the artist is bringing us right in and right up to this tree, and then giving us some stoppers up here with some interest to keep us coming back into the painting. I think the magic of this particular painting is all of this lacy, the way the nature is just shown with this great lace. It just looks intriguing and like we can hardly take our eyes off it. And you just get the feeling that these are old, haggard, windblown trees that the wind blows off the ocean or something for a long time and leaves these trees with this kind of a structure that's left. But anyway, you can barely take your eyes off it. And look at the dark here. The artist has used a light, a dark, a mid, a light, given us lots of interest throughout the rock formations. And no 2 rocks are the same shape or the same size or the same color, really. So I think the artist has given a lot of thought to composition here. I like to see something like this so far away from just our typical landscape. Look at the curvilinear shapes. One curvilinear shape a little bigger than the next one. But what really holds this painting together, in my opinion, is this wonderful grid work. Look at the grid work here in sort of a larger size. Then we have the grid work in a medium size. And then we have the grid work in a small size. And on top of that, this artist has given us the beauty of a triangle inside a rectangle. So our eyes go from here to here to here and back to here, and then wander around in between. There's been a lot of echoing of the same shapes and the same colors, which offer a lot of interest. But I think the beauty is that all of this intrigue is right on the edges and just allows our eye to wander and never want to leave. There are no arrows going off of this painting. And we can decide for ourselves what it means. We have an infinity shape here, which always suggests, you know, an open-ended anything. And I think we can, as a viewer, bring our own experiences to this and enjoy it based on whatever kind of life we have lived. Here we have tradition. This is Joyce Green. I'm sorry. This was Robert Major, and Take PC number 17 is the name of this piece. I apologize that I didn't identify it. Joyce Green is giving us Aqua Allegro con Brio. I really enjoy the strong blues against the oranges, the use of complements here. Very simple subject, just a little patch of water, very little detail, just a few little limbs coming in to give us a sense of place and time. But what intrigued me the most about this piece was the swirling of the waters and the sense of movement. This just feels like a roaring stream or a roaring ocean or waves with a strong pull coming back. And I think part of the beauty is the repetition, the echoing of this wonderful warm color echoed down in here throughout the dominant blues. And a little bit of magic is the white shapes that this artist has chosen to leave. And the white shapes just sort of invite us into the water, invite us into the swirl so that we can actually feel the water. It feels cold and crisp and clean. Very nicely done. Now this we don't see every day. This is an in-your-face face. Renee Eisenbart, and this is Ferry to Dubrovnik. So this artist has gone right for the close-up of the face, and all of the intrigue is right here in the sunglasses. Look at the rich colors, the aquas, the blues, the purples, the shadows from the hat. You get this little suggestion here that this hat has a perforated brim, and therefore we get these wonderful dancing shadows. And look at the colors over here. We go from lavender to green to gray, all these unexpected colors that we see over here, and then they're reflected again in the eyeglasses. And I think the best part is right here. All of this detail on the nose, you can just feel the sunshine hitting her face and the joy. This, on the other hand, is another figurative piece, but further back. This is Lori Hess, and this is Susanna. I think this is really well done watercolor. We have the background that is just modeled enough so that it doesn't compete with the foreground, but it's not boring, it's very interesting. We have the colors from the background repeated in the hair and repeated in her little sundress. We get the feeling her eyes are very contemplative, and look at those eyelashes making all the difference as they drift off to the side. One of the things I find with figurative pieces is that when the figure is looking off to the side rather than right at you, sometimes they become more saleable because people are more apt to live with the emotion rather than when a face is looking straight at you. We tend to focus on the face and you know, what the face looks like. This is more of an emotional painting. I think the edges are done beautifully. They are just soft enough and just hard enough that it doesn't feel like she is cut out on top of the background. It feels like she's integrated with the background, but this soft edge, almost to a hard edge, is really effective with the sunshine hitting her shoulders. So I just thought it was a very nice example. And look at up here, the hair, because of the sunshine, is almost completely bleached out and looks completely believable. Barbara Jorg, Walking Among Stone. I really enjoy this piece. I love the stone shapes. It looks a little bit like Stonehenge. I also like the crucifix, the shapes of the crucifix, and I particularly like this one going off the painting. If this stopped right here, all of the interest would be right here. But the artist wisely giving us a lead in with this piece, a few here, and then taking this piece right off the painting, just really invites our eye to wander around and gives us the sense that maybe it's about something, and gives it a little bit more emotion and a little bit more concept. I love the diagonal going the opposite way here and all the rich colors, and I like how spontaneous all of this white and aqua, all of this is, these three little white dots I think are very important, as is this little bit of white that invites us into this painting and invites us into the stones. And then of course, this is not the only thing that goes off the edge. We have this nice big sweeping shape up here going off the edge, and again down here with a smaller one over here. So I think the artist has done a very good job of, the composition here is really strong, and it was a big part of my choice. Very nice. Miles Bath II, Divine Comedy Inferno. Now, this is just plain fun. Look at the little cartoon characters that are buried here, there, and everywhere. They're all wandering around. But the color is intriguing. The maze that leads us into the colored pencils that lead us into an unexpected cliff, and all of it is just plain fun. And this shape here, bringing us in, and this arrowing in toward the interior, everything is leaning in toward the interior where there is not much happening. And I think that makes for a really strong composition. And this is something that we don't see every day. I really enjoyed this figurative piece. I like the way he's looking off to the side, because it takes it away from a portrait and more into a figurative piece. But what I was quite drawn to in this piece is this background. Look at these gray shapes. And of course, we don't know what they are, metal or whatever, and we don't need to know what they are. But what they do is really offer some intrigue. If this were just a figure with just a modeled background behind it, we maybe wouldn't give it a second glance. But because it's got all this repetitive pattern on pattern on pattern in the back, it makes us much more intrigued. And this little shape, whatever it is down here, doesn't matter, because this ties to this and gives it a sense of a diagonal thrust with his eye looking off over his shoulder. So makes for a strong composition, and it has a very painterly feeling, and it has a sense of emotion. I love this kind of painting. It's like a patterned painting of something industrial. I love the patina. Look at all the different colors and the different textures that is in the background. Look at how well placed the darks are, and that the darkest darks are against the lightest lights, age-old success story. How the curvilinear comes into the curvilinear, but we do have the geometric to offset it. We have this bit of diagonal thrust here that offers just a little bit more interest than if it were absolutely straight. And much of the background is handled almost to abstraction. And yet we completely know what it is, and we don't need to see all the details to recognize it as an industrial faucet. these leading in are very interesting. This artist has designed this in a very fascinating way, but I'm particularly drawn to the texture and the patina that this artist has created. And this is Mark McDermott, Independence Mine #1. Chris Krapinski, Caramel Apples. This is just so skillfully done. This is tradition at its best. We have the fruit, the uneven number of apples. We have the caramels that invite us into the painting. We have the back that's a little darker and a little less defined. We have right here this invitation into the painting. There's just nothing about this painting that doesn't work. I think the best part for me of this painting is the handling of this shadow. Look at the luminosity in this shadow, and look at how you can see the pattern of the quilt right through the shadow. And sometimes we overdo the shadows, or sometimes we don't get enough rich color in them. But the fact that this shadow is done in a cast of violet tones and is so luminous just really draws us into this apple and into these caramels, and around and around and around your eye goes, never to leave. Beautiful piece. I find this to be very interesting. Pat, I'll butcher your name, Pat. It's Mozook, maybe. Climbing the Ladder. I love this. This is a traditional square grid with the 4 quadrants divided, and yet we've got a little higher here and a little lower here, a little offset here and here to create more interest. We've got a warm cool and a cool blue with all these dances. Look at the complements right here, the orange against the lime green, and how it just sort of dances throughout the painting. This is a very simple painting. I don't even know the size, but I think very intriguing and lots to entertain our eye. And if all of what I've not mentioned doesn't intrigue you, I just love this little sense of curvilinear that is not there for any apparent reason, but it just completely works. It works to bring your eye in and keep it right here where we want it to be. I think the colors are just really powerful in this painting. This is our second piece, Liz Walker, Upon Closer Inspection #1. The second I saw this painting, I was completely drawn to it. I love the simplicity of the figure, the dark top, the skirt that drifts from the background into the foreground with very little separation. We get a sense of more than just her, a sense of swirling emotions around her, or troubles, or whatever she may be thinking. I think the brilliance to this is that the hair is the only warm, with the exception of one little line here and one little line coming in here. And these lines are so incredibly well placed. This line just brings you right down into her head tipped away, her face not having any sense of expression. So we can't read anything into that. We have to bring it all from the body language. I just think this is brilliantly done, and I think it is fascinating. This is our best of show, Paul Foster, Patterned Light. I was so intrigued with the placement of shapes. This is the most simple subject, probably the interior of a barn or an old building, but look at the whites, the pattern of whites, and then it repeated down here. So this gives us a complete diagonal thrust. Look at the large white up here that completely draws our attention. Look at the dark coming down to showcase the white. Look at the light that brings us down into the painting. Look at the light here that brings us back up into the painting. Look at just a little bit of horizontal here to make the transfer from these shapes. And then the piece de resistance for me is this little white shape down here that completely invites us in, and it's edged with a little bit of red, which we find up here, and we find a little bit over here, and just a little bit tucked into the painting, a little red in here. So overall, I think this is an amazing composition. I love the way the painting drifts right off into nowhere. Gives just us a sense that we're just seeing a little snippet of sunshine coming through on a beautiful morning. But I think the rich colors are what make it really stronger than maybe it would have been if it had just been neutrals, or if it had been the actual colors, you know, of the scene. So Paul Foster, Patterned Light, congratulations. I think it's a beautiful painting. I would like to invite you all to my art mentoring. It's about composition, design, and creativity, and critiques, and all things art. So I would invite you to visit me at lindabakerartmentor.com. I would like to finish off the rest of, just take a couple moments, and without comment, I'm going to go through the rest of the exhibit, just so that you can see the depth and the breadth of this wonderful exhibit, and you can see some of the other pieces. Catherine Anderson, Nancy Barch, Judy Betts, Matthew Bird, Jerry Bowman, Marilyn Bradley, Francisco Brayton, Carol Brody, Tom Brown, Nell Dorn Bird, Jennifer Clark, Gail Delger, Tom Franci, I always do this wrong, Francis Sconi, Lisa Franklin, Gail Gerson, David Gregory, Ann Hightower Patterson, Pat Holscher, Olga and Aleska Ivanov, Carolyn Latinician, Georgia Mason, Ann Miller Strandu, R. Mike Nichols, Elaine Nunnally, Barbara Olson, Ann Pember, Cora May Pipkin, Linda Renaud, Sydney Rubin, Megan Pipke, Heather Savage, Darcy Scott, Jerry Smith, Susanna Spann, Peggy Morgan Stenmark, Jane Stoddard, Elaine Suzins, I say her name wrong all the time too, Sazina, Janine Schwartz, Don Taylor, Jackie Bowe, Shavanthop, I shouldn't have tried this, Watan Akko, Lorraine Waltree, Jean Weiner, David Wicks, Susan Wilhelm, Kiko Yasuoko, and that is the end of it. Thank you so much. Okay, that is it for your award winners and all of the rest of the show. I apologize at how I butchered the names. And if, when I came to your award, I didn't say the name of you or your painting, I do apologize. I sort of get into looking at the painting, and sometimes I fail to give that note. I hope you've enjoyed this. I loved being your juror and being a part of the 47th Rocky Mountain National Water Media. Thank you so very much.